Hello, welcome to Guide London. My name's Nick Salmond. I'm a Blue Badge Guide for London and one of 600 members of the Association of Professional Tourist Guides. That's the organisation behind the Guide London website. Now, if you've been following us for the last few weeks, you'll know we've been doing a series of live broadcasts, this time on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. We are not allowed to do any guiding at the moment because London is in lockdown, so we're trying to do our guiding through the medium of social media and excite your interest in London so that when the lockdown is over, we hope that you will come and visit us. So this is our 15th programme. We're at the end of our 5th week now, and we've done programmes on history of London, things like the Blitz, the Great Fire of London. We've done a little bit of the culture, some of the great art galleries in London, and we're trying to bring a bit of what London means to us to you. If you've missed any of our broadcasts, then they are all available on our YouTube channel. Just go and search for Guide London. You'll find all the broadcasts there. They're also on our Facebook page as well. And do share them with your friends. We want as many people as possible to see our broadcasts. Today, we're talking about May Day. It's the 1st of May today, and that's a day that's marked around the world in many different ways. These days, most people associate May Day with workers' rights. It's known as the International Day of the Worker, and it was designated such in 1904. Before that, though, May Day was celebrated as the transition from the winter period into summer. And the first recorded event celebrating May Day, marking May Day, dates from the 14th century here in the United Kingdom. Today, I'm joined by two Blue Badge guides. Mark Godowski is joining us, as is Jill Cook. And for the next half an hour, roughly, they're going to take us through some of the ways that people in Britain mark May Day and tell us about some of the places you can go and visit around this time of year in London and the surrounding area. We are broadcasting live, so if you've got any comments or questions for Mark or for Jill, then put them in the comments and we'll try and answer them at the end of the broadcast. And tell us where you're watching from, and also tell us if there's any particular May Day traditions in your area or country. We'd love to hear about those as well. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to start telling us all about May Day. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Godowski, and I'm joined today by fellow Blue Badge guide Jill Cook to
Hello.
welcome in the May. It's also the Celtic Beltane, the day of bright fire, the first day of summer, and a celebration of new life, which we celebrate by dancing round the great pole, the symbol of fertility, in a cycle, like the cycle of the seasons. Now, May Day, spring is at its peak and summer begins. And I quote from a New Age text: the May goddess marries the green man who embodies the natural potency and fertility. The maiden goddess has reached her fullness. Now, rituals used to be performed to protect cattle, crops and people. There were bonfires, visits to the holy wells, and the May blossom itself. The May blossom there, the hawthorn, is in England, called May. And the May Queen is life itself, pure, fresh life, riding a procession to be enthroned and then crowned in flowers. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Jill, who herself has been a May Queen. Jill.
Hello, my name's Jill Cook, and I want to tell you about my personal experience of being a May Queen. You can see a picture of me here. I was 7 years old and I attended a London infant school. Well, it was a big event in those days and the whole school took part. As you can see, it tapped into the old traditions. I'm wearing a long white dress and white gloves, holding a bouquet of seasonal flowers. I have the crown on my head, but that wasn't how the day started. There was a procession in which I was bareheaded and I circled the playground. Coming behind me was a young man, a classmate of mine, who carried the crown. And on my right, you can see another girl. She was last year's May Queen. When we reached the podium, people had been strewing flowers in front of us. She crowned me Queen of the May, and then I had the crown on. Then there was entertainment. Every class did something, whether it was singing, whether it was dancing, or whether it was a gym display. The highlight of the day was the Maypole Dance. The Maypole we were in awe of that. It was kept in the cupboard. It came out once a year. Yes, you can imagine, just like a Christmas tree. The ribbons were attached and only the best people got to dance around the maypole. From my point of view, my memory of that day is sitting watching the show, but wishing that I could dance around the maypole. Now we're going to head back to Mark for some more stories about Maytime.
And a few words from Charles Dickens, our hyper-exuberant London rambler. There he is as a young writer, a social activist and serial novelist, at the very start of his stellar career, writing in 1836 under the pen name of Boz. So here we are. The 1st of May. There is a merry freshness in the sound, calling to our minds 1,000 thoughts of all that is pleasant in nature and beautiful in her most delightful form. Well, he made plenty of money as Boz and was able to get married and buy a house and start a family. And you see his house now, which is one of London's best independent museums, the Charles Dickens House, with excellent, well-informed staff and volunteers and a very, very good tea room. Back to the sketch by Boz itself, that depiction of May, from the illustration that's going to come up, you'll see that things ain't what they used to be in May. Dickens remembers the freshness, the dancing, the revelry in the country, and contrasts it with this grimy London scene of rabble there, of beggars, really. In the background, in that strange pile of leaves, is a Jack in the Green. And in front, those dwarfish little dark figures are the exploited children who worked as chimney sweeps. Although Dickens does say that certain sentimental Londoners saw them as the lost son and heir of some illustrious personage. Which takes us now over to Jill again and a lovely story about the sweeps.
Yes, well, chimney sweeps. Superstitious Brits always thought that chimney sweeps were lucky. Think of Bert in Mary Poppins. But we're going to step back a little bit further in time to the 1770s. And chimney sweeps took part in May Day rituals. So 50 years before the sketch that's on the screen now, we saw a visitor to London described a procession full of chimney sweeps. Normally their faces were black. But this time in May, they had meal on their faces, powdered white, periwigs white as snow, and paper lace stuck to their clothes. Often they were in processions with the milkmaids, and they were in several parishes all around London. So she invited the chimney sweeps to eat roast beef and plum pudding. And one in particular was called David Porter. Now, David Porter had been an apprentice chimney. As he grew up, he became a builder. He built a London square. He named it Montague Square in honour of Mrs. Elizabeth Montague. Now, enough of chimney sweeps and their lucky superstition. We're going back to maypoles and to Mark.
Well, we're going back to maypoles and to a rarity among city churches. It's a rarity because it's medieval. And if it's medieval, it meant it survived the Great Fire of London in 1666, which burnt down 87 churches. It's called St. Andrew Undershaft. And there it is. The shaft it's currently under is our beloved Gherkin. The original shaft was a maypole, which was then chopped down by killjoy Protestants in 1547. You see another view the other way around. Yeah. Yes, there it is, the mellow stone of St. Andrews against the shafts of the stainless steel Lloyd's building and one of our favourite high-tech skyscrapers, the cheese grater there. But the original maypole was chopped down 1547. 1547, And in that year, London was a small town with a population of fewer than 100,000 and was open to the countryside. And the great historian of the 1500s, buried in St. Andrews, is this man, John Stowe, who's still scribbling away with his genuine goose quill. And in 1598, he writes these words. So here we are. He noted how the citizens of London celebrated May Day. They would walk into the sweet meadows and green woods, there to rejoice their spirits with the beauty and savour of sweet flowers and with the harmony of birds. Now, another great Maypole was halfway between the Square Mile, the old ancient city of London, and the other city of London to the west, Westminster, the seat of the royalty and of government, on a square which was replaced later by this church. The importance of that Maypole is that it, like St. Andrews, was chopped down only to be re-erected at the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, the return of the Merrie Monarch to London after 11 years away. England, 11 years without the monarchy, welcomes Charles II, our Merrie Monarch. And that is an illustration which purports to show the pretty witty Nell Gwynn, one of the girlfriends of Charles II, dancing under the Maypole. The original one was a bit bigger than that. The original was 130 feet tall. But to quote again the book, the Chronicle, amid the sounds of trumpets and drums and loud cheerings and the shouts of people, the Maypole, far more glorious, bigger and higher than ever anyone that stood before it, was raised upright, which highly did please the Merrie Monarch, and the little children did much rejoice, and ancient people did clap their hands, saying, golden days began to appear. Charles's restoration brought monarchy back with a bit of a vengeance, though there was a little bloodshed and a lot of libertine swagger. He became the Merrie Monarch of a 1660s swinging London. He was the May King, back in town on his 30th birthday, the 29th of May, Oak Apple Day. Now, why oak? Because after his defeat in the final battle of the English Civil War, 1651 at Worcester, he sought refuge in an oak tree, clad in peasant garb, with walnut oil rubbed into his face and his flowing locks chopped off. He'd even rehearsed his peasant accent, and he merges into the oak to become the English monarch who comes closest to myth. He's a green man, a wily fugitive in the wild, a creature of dark good looks with a knowing eye and a wicked moustache. He's an international man of mystery, famed for his sexual appetite. He fathered over or up to 14 love children, the male heirs all becoming dukes: Monmouth, Grafton, Richmond, St. Albans, and he's commemorated in over 400 pubs, which show him there crowning an oak or hidden in that oak, escaping from capture by the Roundhead enemy. So in 1660, Charles was back in style, restoring and restoring, refurbishing the palace at Whitehall, bringing a new sumptuous flamboyance and Baroque flair to Windsor Castle, and commissioning a whole new set of crown jewels: crowns, scepters, orbs, swords, maces, altar furniture, and plate for the banquet table, all of which can be seen at the Tower of London, where you can also learn a bit more about the character of Charles, or just become even more bewildered by him. When you listen to the story and look it up, 1671, Crown Jewels heist, the fate of Colonel Blood. A very strange story. So it was during Charles's reign that the focus of London's elite moved to the west from the old port city of London towards the village of Mayfair, famous for its Mayfair, and now famous for its wealthy inhabitants. But there was the May festivity, which included the following activities: bare knuckle fighting, semolina eating contests, women's foot racing, all of which was banned in 1754 when the area had gone too far upmarket. But you can still go to Shepherd's Market now, and it's got that village feel. Moving now further to the west, about a mile away, we celebrate the 29th of May, Oak Apple Day, at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea. There you see that golden statue swathed in greenery, the oak, and the man in red is a Chelsea pensioner, and he's being escorted by two Cockney pearly queens. And they're celebrating the King's birthday because he was the founder of the Chelsea Hospital for veteran soldiers. And in order to celebrate that birthday, they've had to clear up very quickly from what happened in Chelsea Hospital just before that, a real May fixture, which says something about the favourite activity of many English people, namely gardening. So over to Jill for that.
Hello again. Well, the English certainly love their gardens, and the Great Spring Show had been going for over 100 years. It's now known as the Chelsea Flower Show, and this highlights the showcases garden design, new plants, and shows ideas to gardeners. It's a real fixture on the London social scene. Now, the Queen, as you can see here in the picture, is a regular visitor. She started coming to the flower show with her father, the late King George VI, when she was still a princess. And in 2019, it was kept in the family because Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, designed a garden especially for children called the Back to Nature Garden. There are wonderful things to see here, wonderful displays of flowers. Here you can see one on the slide. But we are very lucky this year. Although the show isn't taking place in the Royal Hospital, from the 19th to the 23rd of May, we have the virtual Chelsea Flower Show. All of us, in the good company, I hope, can see the flower show from the comfort of our own homes. So that's to be recommended. But if you want to see a garden all year round, then I recommend the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew. They are just a short train ride, a tube ride from the centre of town. There is so much to see there. These were set up in the 1760s. They were originally royal pleasure gardens, and there are 5 trees that were planted that are still there, called the 5 Lions. To spend a day here with a picnic in any weather, it is ideal. You can take this treetop walk you can see in the slide. This is 18 metres above the level. You get a bird's eye view of the trees here. I would also recommend going into some of the indoor places. For example, this magnificent palm house dates from the 1840s. It's an indoor rainforest. It was absolutely amazing. It looks like a cathedral, and it's a temple to plants. There are other greenhouses as well that you can go into. One of them, the Princess of Wales, has 10 different climate zones in it. It's absolutely amazing. But there's one thing that you won't see. That is the compost heap. Now, being the Royal Botanic Gardens, this also is rather special. Not only is it one of the biggest compost heaps in Europe, but it is supplied by the manure when they muck out the stables of the household cavalry. Now, it had to have a royal connection. And on that note of a royal connection, we're going to go back to Mark.
Well, our next stop takes us further west and to Oxford, which is famous for its May morning celebration, when the choir of Magdalen College, there's its tower, goes to the top of that tower and sings in the new month and the new season. Now, nowadays, it's not all choirs and poetry under Oxford's dreaming spires. It can get a bit raucous, but you might well have seen this ceremony in the film Shadowlands, featuring Anthony Hopkins as C.S. Lewis, the man in the next slide on the left, the Narnia author. Yeah, and he's there with his fellow member of the Inklings Club of Writers, J.R.R. Tolkien, famous for his Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, Tolkien was Professor Tolkien, famous also as the Oxford, the world expert in the Green Man legends, particularly in Norse, Anglo-Saxon and Middle English poetry. And these green men spouting fertility and fronds from their mouths occur all over churches all over the country, from St. Paul's Cathedral to this one we see here, and next from my very favourite cathedral, Norwich. Lovely things, which could be called pagan, but I'd just say they're eternal symbols of life. Very beautiful. Now, another thing that you're going to get on May is the Morris dancer. Originally very sort of raunchy and wild and rather like the Green Man, but their name actually comes from a dark origin. They were the Moorish dancers, Morris dancers, and there are all sorts of schools of Morris dancing, as many as you have samba schools in Rio, but they're sort of fey and folksy, but also boozy and blokish, a very English mix. And you're going to find them wherever you go. Stratford-upon-Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace, you'll see quite a lot of them, but they just pop up outside pubs and have a lot of fun and a lot of beer. Behind those ones in white, you see one of Oxford's most beautiful buildings, the Radcliffe Camera. But we're leaving the dreaming spires of Oxford and heading into deepest England to another sort of circle, the great monoliths of Avebury. And here in Avebury, the megaliths, the Neolithic prehistoric site, you're going to see all year round dancers, singers, people, new age adepts who enjoy their time there. It is a World Heritage Site, and what you get is the stone circle in the middle of the village. That's the next slide, or rather, in fact, the village in the middle of a great stone circle, which regards itself as the big brother of that other more famous stone circle, the ones with the design feature of the hanging stones, hence Stonehenge. But this is a beautiful little village with something for everyone. You can bring the family and have a picnic on the ramparts and pick daisies. You can take a walk further afield and look at the next slide, and you'll see the man-made hill, Silbury Hill, and the West Kennet Long Barrow. And there you can actually go there into those ancient tombs. It's all very hands-on. The village shop sells new age essentials, and there's plenty of dancing and singing, even weddings being celebrated among the stones. Avebury is very much linked to a site 50 miles further on, which celebrates the legendary Arthur, the Isle of Avalon at Glastonbury, and that's Glastonbury Tor. On the feast of the dragon slaying Archangel Michael, that's the 8th of May, there's a direct alignment, or so the New Age people tell me, between Glastonbury and Avebury along the St. Michael line, a so-called ley line. There's a lot more that you could learn from the Blue Badge Guides of the Southwest about what goes on in the Southwest, where there are lots of celebrations of May. For instance, one of the most famous is in the fishing village of Padstow, the May Day Obby Orse cavortings. And once you've been listening to us, you might want to go onto YouTube and have a look at that. But now we're moving back nearer to Oxford, to the Cotswold Hills, and to a very raucous aspect of May Day mayhem, the Cooper's Hill cheese rolling, which attracts lunatics from across the globe to hurl themselves down a concave hill in pursuit of a 9-pound wheel of double Gloucester cheese, which reaches speeds of 70 miles an hour. And I quote, 20 young men chasing a cheese off a cliff and tumbling 200 yards to the bottom, where they're scraped up by paramedics and packed off to the hospital. One little correction, though, a recent winner was not a young man, but a young woman. Also in the Cotswolds, a tradition over 400 years old now, are the Cotswold Olympic Games, featuring events such as tug of war, shin kicking, dwile flonking, judo, piano smashing, Morris dancing. I could go on, but we're returning to the tranquility now of London. And May Day reminds us that some of the nicest parts of London are the old villages that were within walking distance of the city. And you as a tourist are likely to be staying in one of those villages. It's where the biggest hotels are. Kensington, Marylebone, Chelsea, Greenwich, and maybe also Rotherhithe, which is very big this year on the south bank of the Thames, because Rotherhithe is where in 1620, 400 years ago, we had the departure of a group of people very much looking forward with hope to the future. And their ship was named after the Mayflower. But now we're going to take a boat, as one can, up the River Thames and rejoin Jill at one of the most beautiful of the historic royal palaces and gardens. And here she is to introduce it.
And here we are at Hampton Court Palace. This is one of my favourite royal palaces. And as you see, it's a feast for the eyes. The front of the palace is here. This is the main entrance, and this is over 500 years old. Henry VIII loved it here. He would come by boat. His son and heir, Edward VI, was born and baptised here in the palace, and he married his sixth wife, Catherine Parr, the one who survived. So what can we see in this palace? Well, we see the Chapel Royal, we can see Henry's state apartments, and we can see the Great Hall. Here it is with its amazing hammer beam roof. We can also visit Tudor kitchens. They're enormous. They prepared hundreds of meals there, and there's always a roaring fire in the kitchens. But not only that, we'll walk through the palace and we come out to the back door. Well, this is some back door. Have a look at it. This is the garden. This palace is a Baroque splendour. It was completed in 1700 for King William III, designed by Christopher Wren. Isn't it amazing? So these two palaces in one, it's really full of treasures. There's artworks, tapestries, these are the staterooms, and there are 60 acres of gardens here. It contains a maze, the oldest puzzle maze in the world, dating from 1700. There's also a grapevine. Now, the grapevine is 250 years old. So have a look at the size of this. It produces over 600 pounds of grapes every year. They're sold in the shop in the palace in September. They're round, black dessert grapes, and they're delicious. There's something for everyone here. Tea rooms, restaurants. There's a children's playground as well with a dragon. And don't forget the resident ghosts. This is all a 30-minute train ride from the centre of London. And now we're going back to Mark to finish off our presentation.
Thanks, Jill. This time of the year, London is full of the smells and the blossoms. Remember that London is 47% green space. Now, we've glanced at a few things, and you might want to follow up on some of them. But one thing I've wanted to tell you is that there are blue badge guides of all types, of all interests, and across the whole of the country, who are waiting to show you their patch. Because all of us blue badge guides, we might well be very well trained, but we're above all passionate about our own areas, and we look forward to welcoming you back.
Mark and Jill, thank you so much for a fascinating trip around the country to look at how different parts of the country mark May Day in very different ways. And we've got some comments. Monica is watching us from Argentina. Hi to you, Monica, in Argentina. Ariana talks about how in her country, 1st of May Day is a big celebration for workers. And of course, that is how May Day is marked all around the world. You mentioned shin kicking, the shin kicking competition. Penny Bowden suggests that we do that on the tube, usually. Not in lockdown, of course, at the moment. But yes.
Man spreading. That's another sport.
Absolutely. You find it all here in London. What is your favourite bit? At the moment we're locked down in London, so we can go out for our daily walk. But when the lockdown is lifted, where is the one place that you love wandering around in London at this time of year in the spring? So, Mark.
I'm a South Londoner, and I can very easily get across the bridge to Chelsea. Maybe not to the Chelsea Flower Show, that's a bit elite, but just wandering around the streets there, you're always coming across something new, something interesting, and beautiful gardens. I can't get enough of Chelsea, that area.
And what about you, Jill? What's your favourite part?
Well, I have the palace on my doorstep, but I like to go into the centre of town, into the little alleyways of London, and find those hidden gardens and sit outside and enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, the City of London is a lovely place to wander around, isn't it? Because it's got so many small little gardens which you can just wander in and catch a bit of sunshine. And people forget about that. They go to the big parks and they forget about those beautiful little gardens you get in the city.
Absolutely.
Thank you both very much. I say if you want to get in touch with either Mark or Jill, then go to the Guide London website. Jill's address is there. That will take you to her profile and you can find out all about her guiding activities. Mark's address is very similar. Or just go to the Guide London website. If you go to the Guide London website, you'll come to a page like this. You can search for popular tours that our London guides do. You can search for a particular guide if you want. And we have guides not only in English, but of course in many other languages as well. Thank you very much for watching today. Do join us next week. Amongst the things we'll be looking at next week, on Monday we'll be looking at the Beatles in London. If you're a fan of the Beatles, then you want to see all those locations associated with the Beatles. That is on Monday. And then we have history on Wednesday. And on Friday, a week today, is a very special day because it's the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. So that's the day that the Second World War ended in Europe. And we've got a special programme looking at how VE Day was marked at the time and about the end of the Second World War. So don't miss that. That's next Friday. As I say, share these broadcasts. If you want to see them again, they're all on YouTube and on Facebook as well. But from Mark, from Jill and from me for today, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.